Sorry, Bhante, we can't hear you.
I'm not talking, so you don't hear me. Okay. The voice is okay now?
Yes, Bhante.
Yes, Bhante, we can hear you.
Yes, hear you, Bhante.
Loud and clear, Bhante.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll do the salutation. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Homage to the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the fully enlightened one. Okay, so good morning, everybody. And now we're continuing with our reading of the Anguttara Nikaya, the numerical discourses of the Buddha, and still in the Book of Sevens. We take Sutta number 38. This is a rather specialized topic, and this sutta is dealing with a type of knowledge that is called we translate it as the analytical knowledges. Let me just get a word file so I can type. Yeah, in Pali, these are called the four pati sambhida, or sometimes sapati sambhida jnana, and the Sanskrit version is there's a difference, interestingly, in the Sanskrit and the Pali. What is the Chinese? So you must know. Four analytical knowledges. So why? So why? No. Maybe I'm not hearing properly. Okay, there are some of my Chinese students here, but I'm not hearing well enough. Okay, so in Pali, the word is based upon the verb bindati, which means to break. And so from this we get the part bid or bidda. And the Sanskrit rendering of the term is based on the verb vindati, which means to know. And from this you get the stem vid. And these are sort of specialized knowledges that are said to be possessed by, maybe call this, the arahants of the highest grade. When they achieve arhatship, they gain these special knowledges by which they can know the nature of things and the right way to express things in great detail and with great precision. And the one who is considered the sort of foremost achiever of the analytical knowledges was the Venerable Sariputta. But because Venerable Sariputta was called the foremost in Panya and wisdom, so the designation by the Buddha of the chief disciple, of the foremost disciple in the analytical knowledges, was another monk closely associated with Sariputta called Maha Kotita, or sometimes it comes out, the name comes out as Maha Kotika. Two alternatives. And so what are these four analytical knowledges? And so are you seeing my notes file, just to make sure?
Yes, Bhante, we're
Yes.
seeing your notes file.
Okay. So there are four analytical knowledges. So we have, one is the analytical knowledge of meanings. So in Pali, this is called Attapati Sangbida. The second is the Dhammapati Sangbida, which is the analytical knowledge of Dhammas. The third is called Niruddhi Patisangbida. This is analytical knowledge of terms, terms and expressions. So it's the knowledge of the right terms and expressions for expressing the meaning and conveying the nature of Dhammas. And then the fourth, it's a little difficult to, very difficult to render into English. So I tried in this experimental translation, the analytical knowledge of ingenuity. Yeah, the Pali word is patibana, which means something like inspiration or eloquence. And it's defined as knowledge about kinds of knowledge. And the way this is explained is this is the knowledge of how to use the first three kinds of knowledge when expounding the Dhamma. So you present the right Dhammas or doctrines, you explain the right meanings of those doctrines, and you use the correct terms and expressions to expound those doctrines and their meanings. I don't know, this might be a little bit obscure. Okay, but we just look at this is an excerpt from the commentary. There's a work in the Pali Canon called the Patisambhida Magga. It's a work particular to the Theravada school, and it's included in the miscellaneous collection of the Sutta Pitaka. And the tradition ascribes this work to Sariputta, though scholars have pretty much agreed that it must have been composed maybe any time from the 3rd century, 2nd century BC. And then this is excerpt from the commentary to the Patisambhida Magga. And then we find some rather strange explanations for me. So it says meaning, or the word atta, is in effect, is in brief, the effect of a cause. But the effect is called meaning because it is arrived at, achieved, reached through a cause. And then the text goes on and says the following 5 things should be understood as meanings. Anything arisen from conditions, nibbana, the meaning of a statement, and then using Abhidhamma terminology, a resultant and a functional. I don't know, is this too obscure? It's obscure for me. I have to confess, I started to translate this work about 2 years ago. And then after about 1 year, I gave up on it. It was too obscure. But it's interesting to look at it. Okay, then the following five dhammas, okay, so the five things that should be understood as meanings. So anything arisen from conditions that is an effect, nibbana, and then nibbana is not actually an effect. But nibbana is arrived at or reached through the path. And so in a way, it can be considered an effect. Then the meaning of a statement, a result, and a functional, rather obscure. Okay. Okay, then Dhamma is explained here as a condition that is paccaya, or a cause. And so these are the five things that should be understood as Dhammas. Any cause that produces an effect, then the noble path, because the noble path is what brings the attainment of Nibbana, so it's a cause for the attainment of Nibbana. Then a statement, this would be a statement about the teaching, about the Dhamma, then the wholesome and the unwholesome, because these are causes. Some of these points, as I said, are a bit obscure. Okay, knowledge of terms and expressions for meanings and dhammas. So these would be whatever terms and expressions I use to express the meaning or to characterize dhammas. And then knowledge in regard to kinds of knowledge, or this is also what I call the analytical knowledge of ingenuity. This is the knowledge involved in the divisions of every kind of knowledge. And as one reflects, taking that knowledge as one's object. It is the knowledge that expands upon the three previous kinds of knowledge by way of their range, function, and so on. Okay, so maybe we don't have to go into the rest. Okay, so now we'll go back to the sutta. So now we have 7 qualities by which a monk or any practitioner might soon realize these 4 kinds of analytical knowledges and acquire mastery over them. And so apparently, maybe this is too much. Okay, so if you aspire to attain these analytical knowledges, there are 7 qualities that you have to cultivate. One is to understand when the mind becomes sluggish, that you understand that mental sluggishness has arisen in me. And what's meant by mental sluggishness, we find explained in the note here. Yeah, so I just put, when mental sluggishness has arisen, one understands that mental sluggishness has arisen, that the mind has become lax, lazy, lackadaisical, blocked. So when you're training your mind, you recognize that that sluggishness has set in. Okay, then when the mind becomes constricted internally, constricted means that the mind becomes tight, rigid, blocked, obstructed, then one understands my mind has become constricted internally. And then the opposite of that is when the mind becomes distracted externally. So when the mind becomes constricted, it's tight, blocked inwardly, and it's not so flexible, not so wieldy, not adaptable. But when the mind just runs and roams to external objects, even objects of thought, then the mind becomes distracted externally. And then you have to recognize my mind is distracted externally. So these two are opposite qualities. Constriction is like tightness of the mind. Distraction is excessive looseness of the mind running away from the object. Constriction, the mind is fixed on the object, but it's tight, not able to soften up and relax and merge into the object. With distraction, the mind just runs from object to object, from thought to thought, and doesn't settle and become steady and fixed on the object. So we could say that these first three factors pertain to the development of samadhi or concentration. So those are the kind of skills that one needs to strengthen the faculty of samadhi. So sluggishness means that the mind is overwhelmed by we call sloth and torpor, or dullness and drowsiness. Constriction is tightness, and distraction is the scattered or agitated mind. So once one overcomes those, the next three are, or next four, are concerned with developing insight or wisdom. And here we have the wisdom applied to feelings, perceptions, and thoughts. And so feelings are known as they arise, as they remain present, just even for a moment, as they disappear, as they vanish. So you can fix or focus your mind on contemplation of feelings, and then you observe the succession of different feelings, pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neutral feelings, and you can discern, even at subtler levels, each feeling as it arises, when it is remaining present, as it vanishes. And even when it's said that a feeling seems to be consistently remaining present, but when your mindfulness and clear comprehension, sati sampajanya, become very sharp, you could see even in what seems to be a continuous feeling, say you're getting a continuous feeling of pain in the legs or in the hip, but you're observing that feeling and you see that what seems to be one steady feeling is actually a sequence of individual feelings arising and vanishing very quickly. Okay, then one knows perceptions as they arise, as they remain present, as they disappear. And so when you're doing this in meditation, what you're watching is because you're not perceiving generally not perceiving external visible objects, sounds, odors, tastes. But what you will be observing or perceiving will be, sometimes it could be sounds. If there's a continuous sound outside, and then you perceive that sound, you'll notice the perception of the sound arising. And if the sound is continuous, the perception remains present when the sound stops, the perception disappears. But even if the sound is continuous, you'll notice different perceptions of the sound, each one arising, remaining present, disappearing. And then with touch sensations in the body, for example, if you're doing mindfulness of breathing, and you say you have your focus on the area around the nostrils, so you're perceiving that touch sensation around the nostrils. And so you'll be aware of that touch sensation. So that's a perception of touch, of a touch object. And you might begin, say, with the in-breath. You're aware of the beginning of the in-breath, then the duration of the in-breath. That's the touch sensation remaining present. Then the end of the in-breath, the vanishing of that awareness of the in-breath. The same with the out-breath. But then as the mindfulness becomes stronger, even in one in-breath, one is able to note different perceptions, a sequence of perceptions of in, and with the out-breath, out, 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 out. Each is a different perception. And so that will be with perception of the touch sensation. And then the ideas, I think we could take that under thoughts. This is vitakka. So when thoughts arise, usually if the mind is scattered, we're not able to follow the sequence of thoughts. But to see the thoughts as they arise, remain present and disappear, what you do is to turn the focus of the attention on to the mind itself and just watch the mind like a cat watching a mouse hole for the mouse to come out. And so the cat is just continuously watching the mouse hole, waiting, when will the mouse come out? When will the mouse come out? And so you're watching the mind, and then whenever thoughts arise, you see the thought arising, remaining present, and vanishing. Of course, that's very, very difficult, but at least you'll catch the thoughts as they flow into the mind. It's a little bit like maybe sitting in the movie theater, you're watching a movie picture. So you're sitting there, the movie is unfolding on the screen, and you're watching the different actors and the different scenes in the drama. And so you're watching the different thought formations as they run through the mind, as they proceed through the mind. And if the mindfulness, when it becomes really sharp and clear, then you could see the thought arising, just popping present momentarily, then it vanishes. Or maybe like bubbles arising on the surface of a water, breaking and vanishing. And then the seventh, and it uses the term among dhammas that are suitable and unsuitable, inferior and superior, dark and bright, along with their counterparts. One is grasped the mark well, attended to it well, reflected upon it, and penetrated it well with wisdom. Just see the note here. Not so helpful. It says just mark as cause. Yeah, so basically we could say that this is just the ability to distinguish uh, between wholesome and unwholesome qualities of mind, mental states. What is wholesome? What is unwholesome? And then with their counterparts, so the unwholesome, say, would be greed or lust. The wholesome would be the fading out of greed, the absence of lust. The dark quality would be, or the unwholesome quality would be anger or hatred. The bright counterpart would be non-hatred or loving kindness or patience. Dark quality would be delusion. Bright quality would be wisdom. And so you're able to distinguish and brief the unwholesome and wholesome qualities of the mind. Okay, so these are 7 types of trainings for acquiring the 4 analytical knowledges. And then the next sutta just says that Sariputta, when he possessed 7 qualities, he was able to attain, but to realize these 4 analytical knowledges and acquire mastery over them. And so Sariputta, of course, when he was an arhat, then he didn't have mental sluggishness, constriction of mind, or distraction of mind, but probably when he was training, still in the stage of training for arhatship, he had to be able to distinguish mental sluggishness, mental constriction, and mental distraction. Okay, so this takes care of these 2 suttas. Maybe I'll go on to maybe we could take some short questions and then we'll move on to the next sutta. Okay, so if anybody, and please don't ask me to explain in detail the 4 analytical knowledges. If you have questions, you can use the hand symbol to ask. Anybody in the hall? Okay, so I don't see any questions. Then we'll go on to the next sutta. Yeah, this is going to take us into the Buddhist universe, the universe according to early Buddhism. Now I'm going to have to open. Oh, I see why. Okay, sorry, I'm just having a little trouble with all of these windows. Okay. Okay, so this sutta speaks about 7 stations for consciousness. The Pali expression is vijnana titi. So these are realms of existence in which consciousness, the stream of consciousness, can become established. Different realms of rebirth. Altogether, there are, according to this division, there are 9 realms of rebirth, but in 2 of them are not considered stations for consciousness, because in one of them, consciousness is altogether absent. That is the realm of rebirth, called the realm of beings without perception. So the beings without perception don't have any consciousness. It's a rather strange realm of strange realm of existence, and I don't understand it at all. But it's said that in this realm, the beings who are reborn there have only physical bodies, no consciousness at all, no awareness. This is in Pali, the Asanya Satta. I think in Chinese, Wuxiang, Wuxiang.
How about bacteria or something like that? They don't have consciousness. Where do they fall?
That's a good question. I don't know. But I think that, I don't know. Let me just give a little phone call to some of my bacteria friends, and I'll ask them what kind of consciousness they have. I think bacteria, they must have some kind of awareness, but they don't fit into the scheme. I just don't know. But we'll just stay with the ordinary realms of existence in Buddha's cosmology. Okay, so we have the realm of the non-percipient beings. So those beings have physical bodies, and that particular realm or particular state of existence belongs to the form realm, the Rupa Dhatu. So it's explained that there are some meditators who have a kind of aversion to consciousness, aversion to awareness. And so they develop the four jhanas in a particular mode, and they use the power of the jhana to make the determination to put an end to consciousness.
Talking to boats. Oh my.
Someone, please, people who are not asking questions, please mute yourself. I hear some other voices. Okay, so through the power of their jhana, their meditative absorption, they're able to take rebirth in this realm in which they have a physical body, but no consciousness. And they remain in that realm for the duration of the lifespan, which might be several aeons. And then they'll pass away from that realm and come back perhaps into the human realm where they have consciousness again. So that is not a state of nirvana or liberation, but it's just a temporary existence with a physical body, but no consciousness. The other realm that's not considered a station for consciousness is the realm corresponding to the fourth formless or non-material absorption. That's the base of neither perception nor non-perception, neva sanyana sanyayatana. So in that realm, there is still some kind of consciousness or awareness, but it's very, very subtle, extremely subtle. So one can't say precisely whether it's existent or non-existent. So that realm is not considered a station for consciousness. But all of the other realms of existence are stations for consciousness. And so this is how the classification unfolds. So first, and it's rather obscure in the Pali, in the translation. And so for the explanation, we find an explanation in the commentaries based on the Abhidhamma scheme. And so this is an explanation that will be particular to the Theravada school. It's possible that other schools of early Buddhism had their own ways of explaining these terms based on their own commentaries, which probably most of them didn't survive, haven't survived. Gita, did you have a question?
Yes, Bhante, I have a question. I'm kind of confused. In that first state, if a being doesn't have consciousness and only a body, it sounds, first of all, like an utter waste of time to go even into that kind of a state.
Yeah.
But is there any karma being formed, or is it just using up the past karma to complete that realm of existence? And same thing with the perception, non-perception, the formless base also, neither perception, non-perception, like consciousness. So are they creating karma? How does the paticca samuppada work in this kind of a realm? Does it get
Okay.
suspended?
Yeah, okay. In the realm, the non-percipient realm, the realm without any consciousness, the being can't create karma. So
Yeah.
they're just reborn there through the karmic force of their meditative practice when they were human beings.
Okay.
Once they're reborn there as a result of that karma, but they don't create new karma in that realm because there's no consciousness. And then when they
Exactly.
pass away from there, they take rebirth as determined from some earlier karma.
Previous karmas.
Yeah, not the karma that's created in that realm.
Mhm.
In this plane of neither perception nor non-perception, I think that they can create some some karma there.
Subtle karmas?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not so sure.
Okay, thanks, Bhante. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, let's go through. I see people raising their hands, but let us go through till we at least cover some of these realms. Okay, so the first are called beings that are different in body and different in perception. And then we have some examples of this given as human beings, some devas, and some in the lower world. And then we'll look at the explanation in the commentary, or taken from the commentary. Let's see if the size is the size clear enough, but I'll read it.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, so human beings are different in body, obviously, because no two people have bodies that are exactly alike. Even identical twins have different bodies, and sometimes there are even different features. Even genetically, they might be identical, but in the course of the development, differences appear in the body. And this is the way the difference in perception is explained. And this is what draws upon the Abhidhamma, the Theravadan Abhidhamma system. It says they are different in perception because in some cases, their rebirth perception or rebirth consciousness has 3 roots, in others 2 roots, and in still others without roots. Okay, so what this means, okay, so there are 3 good or wholesome roots that can be present in a rebirth consciousness. Those 3 roots are non-greed, non-hatred, non-delusion. And so human beings with a kind of natural intelligence, some kind of capacity for wisdom, for understanding, are said to have 3 roots. They have non-greed, non-hatred, and non-delusion. And that non-delusion is the basis for their ability to develop wisdom. Okay, other human beings have just 2 roots, which means that they have non-greed and non-hatred, but they don't have non-delusion. And so they've been reborn as human beings through those good roots, but because they don't have that root of non-delusion, which is the seed for developing wisdom, they're not able to develop, say, the jhanas, the insight knowledges, or to attain the paths and the fruits. They could still do good deeds. They could practice generosity. They can observe precepts. They could practice meditation. They could study the Dharma, maybe have some trouble understanding it. Gee, I think I have 2 roots. Trouble understanding it, but if they make the effort, then that will create the condition for developing the three good roots. Rebirth is three good roots. And then those who have a rootless consciousness, those are said to be people who don't have any sort of, we say mentally, people who are mentally impaired. So they're reborn as human beings through some kind of wholesome karma, but the wholesome karma is very weak that brought the human rebirth. And so they don't have any of the good roots. There's not non-greed. They're missing the good roots of non-greed, non-hatred, non-delusion. But still, if they make some effort, they can improve themselves and maybe get a human rebirth with two roots or three roots. Then the devas that have different bodies, different perceptions, these are said to be the devas of the six sense sphere heavenly realms. And these devas have either, according to the commentary, have either three roots or two good roots. But the devas, there's no case where the devas are rootless, reborn with a rootless consciousness. And then the beings in the lower world are said to be certain yakas or spirits. It's said that they are not the pretas, not in that realm. I'm not sure exactly where they fit in, but some of these yakas or spirits are able even to attain the stage of stream entry or even once returner. So they could even have three good roots or two good roots. Okay, so those are beings different in body and different in perception. Okay, then there are beings that are different in body, but identical in perception. And the example given here are the devas of Brahma's company who are reborn through the first jhana. And let's look at the explanation. So in the Brahma world, it mentions the devas of Brahma's company. So there are three levels in this particular realm of existence or plane of existence. The devas of Brahma's assembly, Brahma's ministers, and the great Brahmas. And so the people are reborn into these three different levels based on the attainment of the first jhana. They're all reborn there because they achieved, as human beings, they achieved mastery over the first jhana. But they attain different levels of mastery. So some have a rather weak development of the first jhana, so they get to be reborn as devas of Brahma's assembly. Others have a stronger, medium development of the first jhana. They become Brahma's ministers. And those who have the most powerful development of the first jhana become great Brahmas. And their bodies are said to be different in pervasion according to their respective level. That is, the size of the body can differ, I guess, or the aura, the radiance of the body might differ. So the devas of Brahma's assembly maybe have the smallest body or the smallest aura. The Brahma's ministers have a greater body, greater aura, and the great Brahmas, the Mahabrahmas, have the greatest bodies, the most brilliant auras. So in that way, their bodies are different, but their perception is the same, because for all of them, the rebirth consciousness is the consciousness pertaining to the level of the first jhana. And it said the beings in the four planes of misery also belong to this group. Their bodies are different, but all have the same kind of rebirth consciousness, which technically is called a rootless, unwholesome resultant. Okay, I see some questions. Maybe I'll take the questions now. Okay, Sumangi?
Yes, Bhante, thank you. I actually had a question when Geeta asked one. So the beings without consciousness, when they pass away, there is no Chutisita. So how does that work?
When they pass away, there is no what?
Final thought, Chutisita?
Oh, I see. Oh, I see. Chuti, I see. Chuti Chita.
Yeah.
I guess, yeah, they will be reborn based on karma from an earlier life.
So earlier Chutisita?
I don't know. It's just that karma becomes operative. They don't have a Chuti Chita, but they pass away from the plane of the non-percipient plane, and then they take rebirth, say, back into the human realm based on karma from the previous life, not from the life in the non-percipient realm. But there's no Chuti Chita for them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Ati, is it Ati Lim?
Thank you, Bhante. To be born in the human brain, Bhante mentioned three good roots, two good roots, and no and rootless. Is there a possibility of one good root?
Of one good root? No, no. Because whenever there's non-greed, there's when there's non-greed and non-hatred always will occur together.
Thank you.
Okay, and then Deborah?
Yes, thank you, Bhante. I just wondered at the translation of the title, The Great Sacrifice, how does that um, relate to the text?
Oh no, you see, oh I see. The
In my
chapter,
book,
no,
yeah.
no, okay. It doesn't relate to this text. It's just that
Oh,
the chapter is named, I guess the compiler is looking for names. They just chose the name of one sutta from
oh,
this
I see.
chapter to give it
Thank you.
also the name of, they chose the title of one sutta and
Mhm.
made it the title of the whole chapter.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe because it's a fairly long and complicated sutta. Okay, so let us go on. So we have the beings who are different in body, but identical in perception. Now we come to the next one. This is a bit difficult. So these are beings who are identical in body, but different in perception, such as the devas of streaming radiance. These are called the Abhasara devas. So that's the third station for consciousness. Let us see the note 51. Okay, so the devas of streaming radiance. So this represents all three classes of devas pertaining to the second jhana. So the particular division of the form realm, which corresponds to the second jhana, has three classes, three divisions. There are the devas of limited radiance, the devas of measureless radiance, and the devas of streaming radiance. So three levels. And the text says that in each plane, their bodies are identical, in that they all have the same pervasion. I guess the aura of all of the devas in that particular plane is the same. So in that way, they are said to be identical in body, but their perception is different in that some have no vitaka, no thought or applied thought, but they have vichara. Vichara is what we translate as examination or sustained thought. But others are without vitaka and without vichara, without thought and without examination. So they are identical in body, since all of the devas in a particular plane have the same pervasion, the same kind of aura. But their perception is different in that for the rebirth consciousness, for some, their rebirth consciousness is without vitaka, but still with vichara, whereas others are without vitaka and without vichara. Okay, so that is the third station for consciousness. Then we come to the fourth station for consciousness. So here we have beings that are identical in body and identical in perception, and then the example given here is the Subhakina devas. These are the devas of refulgent glory. And these are the devas who correspond to the third jhana, 52. Let us just see the note. Oh, no, I'm sorry. The devas of the third station for consciousness, yeah. I see. So these devas correspond, they're reborn into this realm through either the second or the third jhana. So that's why some have no vitaka, but vichara only, but others have no vitaka, no vichara. So they're reborn here either through through the second jhana. But where are the fourth jhana devas reborn? Okay, let us take this class. So there are devas that are identical in body and identical in perception. So these are the devas, the Subhakina devas. The devas of refulgent glory. They're identical in body and identical in perception because they all have the perception pertaining to the fourth jhana in the Abhidhamma scheme. And the devas of great fruit also come under the fourth station of consciousness. This is a little confusing to me. Okay, so this would be, the fourth would be those who attain the third jhana and the fourth jhana. So those who attain the third jhana, and then they're reborn through the force of the third jhana, they'll be reborn among the devas of refulgent glory, and they will be identical in body because they have the same aura and the same perception because they're all reborn there through the meditative force of the third jhana. And then there's another realm beyond the devas of refulgent glory, not mentioned here. Those are the devas of abundant fruit or great fruit. They are reborn through the force of the fourth jhana, and they are also identical in body and identical in perception. Okay, then we come to the beings who are reborn in the formless realm of existence. So they don't have any bodies at all, and they are all identical in perception in that they all have the rebirth consciousness that is determined by their particular, the meditative attainment that brought rebirth into that realm. So those who master the base of the infinity of space, the first formless meditative absorption, they can be reborn in the base of the infinity of space. And so that is the fifth station for consciousness. Those who master the base of the infinity of consciousness get reborn in the base of the infinity of consciousness. And that is the sixth station for consciousness. And those who master the base of nothingness get reborn in the corresponding base of nothingness, and that is the seventh station for consciousness. And so those are the seven stations for consciousness. Let's see, note 53. Oh, it just says that the non-percipient devas and the devas of the base of neither perception nor non-perception, they are not included in the seven stations of consciousness, but they belong to the nine abodes of beings. Okay, let's see if there's any questions arising out of this sutta. So it might seem something very remote from our everyday life. How do we deal with our emotions, our feelings, our confusion? But still, it's interesting to know these different possibilities of rebirth. Okay, so Sharanya?
Bhante, my question relates to the relationship between the attainment of jhana and rebirth consciousness.
Yeah.
And I have a question about, is this a cumulative effect in terms of the jhana levels you have attained throughout your lifespan? Or is it the state of mind or those who are lucky enough to be in jhana at the time of death or towards the end of their lives? Does that impact the rebirth consciousness? So which is it? Is it what we've collected over the lifetime? Or is it something that happens towards the end of life? Because I notice in my own practice that it varies. There have been some times when I feel like I have some kind of quiet in the mind, and there are other times not. So I suspect that the development with jhana is not a linear process.
Yeah, but there are different practices that one undertakes to master the jhana so that one can attain it whenever one wants and then extend it for as long a time as one wants, of course, with certain limits, and then emerge whenever one wants. So my assumption is that the jhanic level that will determine rebirth will be the highest level that one has mastered. So say somebody attains the first jhana, second jhana, third jhana, but suppose they've mastered the second jhana, but they can just attain the third jhana intermittently, maybe went on a long retreat, but they don't have that ability to enter whenever they want. then my assumption would be that it is the second jhana that will take on the role of governing the rebirth process. But if they master, say, 3 jhanas, 1, 2, first, second, third, then I would think that it would be the highest jhana that they've mastered that will determine the rebirth process. But an interesting question is, and I don't know the answer, say one has mastered the 3rd jhana, but one doesn't want to be reborn in that particular realm corresponding to the 3rd jhana. Say one wants to be reborn in the Tusita Deva world, which belongs to the desire realm, so that one can form a connection with Maitreya, the future Buddha. Can one do so? And I would think, my assumption is that even though one has mastered the 3rd jhana, but if one forms the strong volitional formation to be reborn in the Tusita Deva world, then through the force of that determination, one will be reborn in the Tusita Deva world. If one masters, say, the 3rd jhana, but one wants to come back to the human realm in order to become, maybe promote the Dharma in the human realm out of compassion to spread the Dharma, I would think that through the force of that determination or vow, one doesn't get reborn in the jhana realm, but one gets reborn back into the human realm. Yeah, that's my assumption, but I don't know whether it's so or not. Okay, so next we'll come to Tim M.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Bhante. I'll preface this with I'm completely okay if you decline to answer this because I think there probably is no clear answer. But is it possible that someone can be reborn in human form, but they possess innately, I would call it demonic qualities? Is that somehow, or this may be some form of consciousness that uh, I don't understand, or is it that they are just deeply embedded in greed, hatred, and delusion? And I will say very public figures that are exhibiting these qualities. Could you please comment on that?
Yes, an interesting question. I would say first that to be reborn as a human being would be would if we follow this Abhidhamma scheme, which I don't take necessarily as being absolute truth. It's just it seems to me just a scheme that or a system of explanation that later generations have worked out. But we would say that to be reborn as a human being, they would have to have in the rebirth consciousness either 3 roots or 2 roots. But that doesn't mean that once the course of their life unfolds, that they cannot be driven, completely obsessed by greed, hatred, conceit, and by other unwholesome qualities, what you would call demonic qualities. Yeah, so those qualities would be arising in the course of their life, and probably in some cases, they're arising because they form those habitual formations back in earlier lives. It doesn't necessarily mean that their minds have been taken over by demons, even though they behave demonically. It's just that those are the qualities that we would call demonic qualities. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, Bhante. Thank you.
Okay.
Or
Okay. Okay, I think we're going to have to stop for the day. And so we'll end now with the sharing of the merits. So I'll recite the verses for sharing the merits with the Dhamma protecting devas, whether they are identical in body identical in perception, different in body, identical in perception, I don't know, but let them rejoice in our merits and protect the Dharma, protect the world. Akasata Chabumata Deva Naga Mahidika Punyanta Manumoditva Chirangra Kantu Sasanang Akasata Chabumata Deva Naga Mahidika Punyanta Manumoditva Chirangra Kantu Desanang Akasata Chabumata Deva Naga Mahidika Punyanta Manumoditva Chirang rakantu mang parang dukkha pata chani dukkha baya pata chani baya soka pata chani soka antu sabe pipani no. May those in suffering be free from suffering. May those in fear be free from fear. May those in sorrow be free from sorrow. May all living beings also be thus. And now we're going to do 3 bows to the Buddha. Okay, so in the hall we could stand.
Bow to Bhante.
Bow to Bhante Bodhi.
Okay, so thank you everybody
Thank
for
you,
joining
Bhante.
this morning.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante. Thanks for the lesson.
Thank you,
Thank you so much.
Bhante.
Great
you,
day.
Bhante.
Be safe, be well.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante.
May the Devas protect us.
Yes. Thank you,
Thank you,
Bhante.
Bhante. Bow to
Thank you,
Bhante.
Bhante.
Thank you very much, Bhante. Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante.
Bhante.
Good health, Bhante. Good
Oh,
health to
Obadiah.
everybody.
Everyone,